What's up, everybody? It's your boy Montoya Smith, aka Black Socrates, and welcome to the Just My 3 Cents podcast, a live interactive podcast where we discuss necessary issues on race, sex, and culture. We've turned this into a pop-up show, and I actually have a guest. I know I typically just let y'all jump on for those who are familiar with our format. It's usually just me and whoever jumps on, but tonight I've invited in a special guest for our first pop-up show, if you will. So I'm gonna bring on one of my Queens of Intellect members, Oshun Ojoh. Thank you, Queen, for being with us. How you doing this morning? I mean, I'm so used to saying morning from the Saturday show.
We usually do, the morning show. Now we doing the nighttime grown folks thing now.
Yeah, no doubt. We're glad to have you on with us, Queen.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you will, go ahead and introduce yourself like I do, like we do on Saturdays. Just give a little bit of your background, and then we're gonna jump right into why we're doing this pop-up show.
Peace, y'all. I am Oshun Ojoh. I'm a queen of intellect. Montoya has me on his Saturday show sometimes. I'm a wife. I'm a mother. I am a techie. I am a clinician of almost 25 years. And also a lifelong community activist and an advocate for Black women and children.
No, I love it. So to get right into this thing, I just realized it was a post that I interacted with you on your page, right? And I just realized, like just yesterday, that the post that you had put up a number like a few years ago, but I guess somebody responded to it and it popped back up. And so I wanted to share the post with everybody. Let me pull it up real quick. And this is pretty much our topic of discussion this evening. So the post said, you were giving some, just mentioning a study very briefly. And you said in a nationwide study, this is a post on Oshun's page, by the way, for everybody listening. She just simply said, in a nationwide study of family court outcomes, only 4% of men pursued child custody. Of that 4%, 87% won primary custody. I wanted to ask, why did you post that? Do you recall why you posted that?
I remember exactly why I posted it. And it was in response to a barrage of posts and comments regarding child support.
Okay.
It was around men being very upset about child support and claiming that women were not only abusing the system of child support, but also misappropriating funds. And so my response was, go get your children.
Makes sense. And so I'm going to tell you the sentiment I took from it when I read it. And we just want to do a deep dive. And for those that know, I actually forgot to put the link on my personal page. Let me do that real quick. Let me go to my personal page for anybody that may want to jump on with us, because we're just doing a deep dive into that post, because I thought it was a great opportunity to do a deep dive. And what, I think you're familiar with, I just love to put things in context.
Right.
And so I thought it was an opportunity to even look at that post and put some things in context, and specifically the numbers, if you will. But hold on one second. I'm trying to put this link in the comments just in case. All right, here we go. Let me see here. Hey, what's up? I see people giving me comments. I just want to put the anybody wants to jump on and join us. Okay, so yeah, when I read the actual post, I was thinking, actually makes sense. And I love the charge. I absolutely agree that if people are going to make that type of charge, a lot of men being upset about child support, because we've done shows on child support, and to a degree, people always say to an extent, it's the government get involved. And so there are definitely a lot of men who are upset about child support. I personally was an advocate of child support, but I do understand that sometimes how the numbers play out, it could be detrimental to some, and some women are for it, some are not. But personally, as an advocate, I'll start there. But looking into that, I've got some background feedback. I don't know if it's mine, or let me figure that out. I just hear some background noise. I don't know if I'm doing something wrong. Did you hear that background noise?
I don't hear anything.
Okay, so it might just be on my end. Okay. Anybody out there listening, let me know if y'all are hearing it and if it's creating an issue. So if she's not hearing it, hopefully y'all are not hearing it. You know what? I may have the show volume up on another page. 1 second, y'all. I don't mean to do that if I do.
I pull up camera.
Nah, you look good. I don't know how to get rid of the feedback. Okay. All right. Hopefully y'all are not hearing the feedback. But anyway, with that said, when I looked at the numbers made a lot of sense to me. And this is the perspective I had, and obviously you can tell me your thoughts on it. When I looked at it, and I was like, well, in this is just my assumptions. Yeah, didn't know, this part right here, just my assumptions. So the numbers made sense to me just from this standpoint that quite often it is seen within culture that in the event that there's going to be a split, or maybe they never even started out together, right? But if there is a split, it is understood and seen in the culture that the children are, in a sense, are going to be with the mother. And then when I see these 4% of the men that did decide to get custody, I'm personally not surprised, one, that they got it, because usually, at least what I've seen in my lifetime, is when a man is willing to do that, it's pretty much when they've decided she's unfit. And they do have their concern, right? They do have their concern that they're unfit. So then they'll do whatever they need to do to go get their children. So I wasn't shocked by the 87%, being successful, because I would think in more cases than not, even if, as you suggested, for the men that are complaining, in their attempt to get their children, they're typically not going to be rewarded as long as the mother, one, doesn't want to give them up, and two, is pretty much fit to be a mother. So the numbers didn't surprise me, but I wanted to throw that out. I feel like that had to be a part of the context, and I just wanted to start there and hear your thoughts on me saying these numbers make perfect sense from my outside looking in view.
I did a few posts and I did a few links on my page, and you can see that there's some of the studies get into more granular details.
Okay.
And so, yeah, those numbers do include men who felt like the mother was unfit, and the judge saw so as well. But they also include the men who simply contested custody up front for no other reason but I want to have my children. I think I'm the more stable parent, or for whatever reason that it was. And the mother wasn't necessarily unfit. And I'm sure that we all have girlfriends, if maybe not the men, maybe not the men folk, but for us women folk, we all have girlfriends who got baby daddies who took them through the ringer and took them to court and got custody of their children when they were our very fit mothers.
You're right. You said, you said the women, y'all do. Yeah, that's men, we don't see that a lot, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I think that
clarity. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think that is a very fair, question to ask. But I also feel like people use that as an excuse, not as an excuse even. What it is that the system worked in a certain way, operated in a certain way for so long. And now we are seeing that it no longer operates in that manner. And so people make an assumption and they say, oh, well, the men who got custody is because the women were unfit. But that's not necessarily a reflection of the reality any longer. I would like to see more studies about, the granular details of it, about, who more comprehensive information, who exactly, was there a case against the mother, or, what exactly happened.
Right.
In all of the instances that I know in my family, the mother was unfit. But in other cases outside of my family, it was just a case of going to court, two parents, saying I want custody, and the judge awarding one parent custody over the other for whatever reason. And there was no issue with one parent being unfit. Okay.
So here's when you were saying, like, you made that distinction that a lot of women know situations like what you just said. So this is what typically happens from obviously this is just anecdotal, our own relative experience, right? And so for men, we're constantly talking about how often that still doesn't happen. So as you say, you have the sisters that took to the ringer and it wasn't an unfit situation. So all we ever talk about as men in general, when we hear these situations, are the brothers who, based on, obviously, we're probably on that brother's side, but just based on what we know, some of them are intimate situations where we're like, why didn't he get her? And so we rarely hear of a brother who is fit, that wants to have their child. We rarely see them get them. So it's, what I'm saying? It's crazy how it's, and I know this is a reality. Like you said, the sister who that happens to. We're typically, and maybe some men will come on and tell me, but I know throughout my lifetime, we're devoid of a man who we felt like should have gotten to, like, they, even with well, I wouldn't say just necessarily, who's able to deem a mother unfit, right? Like you can't just do that outside looking in, hearing a story here or there. I know it takes a lot more than that. So I'm not going to say the woman was unfit, but just looking at the situation, we're outside fighting for that brother, we're hoping for that brother is his situation. And we're like, sometimes a more stable situation, and they feel like they still can't hardly win the situation. Like that's what we experience amongst. I mean, within my lifetime, again, I'm giving you my relative experience. So,
I
what I
feel
mean?
like, Montoya, did you actually know men who went to court to get custody of their children?
Yeah,
Or did
absolutely.
you hear? Oh, okay, because it seems like to me what I hear is
I got real friends that like we still upset they didn't get the baby child. You know what I'm saying?
okay.
Like, yeah, like it's still an issue. I still some that went back to court. I got a couple friends who, like they went through the divorce, and so now they were awarded joint custody, which they were happy about, right? And then if you're familiar, and I'm pretty sure you're familiar with this, if you have joint custody, if one of you leave, then it defaults to the one that stays.
Yes.
In most cases or whatever. So I got friends that go as far as won't even take a higher job because they want to be there for their child. You know what I mean? They could take a job out of town. So I got brothers that go that far or whatever. But it's not even about just me having it. Just even in this dialogue, here's something that is a distinction. Just even talking about child support and these studies, like again, what a little bit we can look at. Something that I think never gets vetted out is that there are literally there are deadbeats kind of on both ends, if you will. But here's something in the dialogues when we're having this dialogue, and I'm not surprised that you experienced what happened on social media because I talk about this a lot on the show. So it's almost like the people who are not willing to step up have all day to spend time on social media.
It's true, yeah.
Right? And so I always talk about the idea that if you're on social media, it skews your viewpoint of what's happening in reality. If that even makes sense. And because those who are just simply going to complain and do nothing now have a platform to do it every day. And it's almost like they can link up. And, like in your situation, I don't know if they came after you or some other post that made them complain and say that. But I don't know if you think about this, if you think about the men in your circle and the men that you respect, I can tell you this, and just to throw this out as a thought process, and we can go some other places. But the men that you respect in your circle, if you think about it, you don't know any of those men that would be in that group that would just simply complain and not do anything about it.
I know a lot of those men.
Okay, so in your circle, this is your circle of men you respect do this?
No, not people that I keep around me intentionally.
Okay.
I just mean,
So let me. I just want to always. What happens is there's an all in water effect that we're unaware of inside of the culture. The men that you keep around you, intentionally, I'll tell you, surprisingly, believe it or not, their stories would be just like mine. Their whole circle is only men that would take custody of their children or fight for the custody of their children.
I don't believe that.
So,
and the reason why I say that is because the numbers speak for themselves. If every man who is accountable has a circle of accountable friends, that's not just you. That means that person also has another circle and so on and so forth. That would mean that there would be a very large percentage of men who are accountable and who would take custody of their children. And that's not the reality.
No. Why? How do you surmise that there would be a large amount based on what I'm saying? So let me show you how the circle works. So how the circle works is, and this is just a reality. So even the men that you respect, if they're anything like myself, the reality is in our community now that we have had, unfortunately, several generations of broken families, right? And so since that has been a reality, boys don't automatically become men, which you understand it already, right? So you mature into a space where you become accountable. And so what happens is, so while I may consider myself an accountable man, I can also remember when I was immature. This is what really happens in real life. When you're in a stage where you don't want to be accountable, you know who you avoid like the plague? The circle of men that will hold you accountable. You avoid them like the plague. So what happens is, I understand you don't believe that, but the men you respect, they would be accountable. I want you to try this after the show. Ask them, do they know of men who don't handle their business? What happens is We don't avoid them; they avoid us. And
My experience has been that men don't hold each other accountable. My experience has been that none of the men that I know who are not none of the men that I know who are not accountable, or I know of who are not accountable. I think it feels like from my observation, it feels like to me that men choose men, right? They don't choose accountability. They don't choose responsibility. They're going to choose and say and make excuses. Well, she's bitter. Well, she's angry. Well, and so my experience in life in general with all things, not just child support, is that men generally don't hold other men accountable. Is that men have maybe you attract a certain circle of men around you who are accountable, but if you have someone in your circle who's not accountable, I don't see them having come to Jesus meetings and saying this is unacceptable behavior. That's not what I see at all. I see other men making excuses for other men.
Yeah, I definitely would encourage you to check out our show, Why Good Men Cannot Check Fuck Boys. I would encourage you, or whatever, because then you won't just be hearing my story. But again, even those are anecdotal stories. I'm very aware of that. So that you hearing other men say what I'm saying now doesn't prove anything. But I would like for you to at least hear more stories than just me. And if there's any men out there listening, jump on and talk about it, or whatever. But we go in depth in how those circles are literally all in water, literally all in water. And and I can confirm it amongst the circle that I have as well, because we do hold each other accountable. We absolutely do hold accountable. I'll give you one personal example, but again, I know I'm one person, so I'm not saying this speaks for all men, not at all, but just for you to hear what accountability sounds like, right? So I had this one guy I used to work with for a number of years, and great father to the children that were here in the Atlanta area with us or whatever, but he had one child that was estranged up north or whatever. And so because I don't have any friends, like I told you, my friends won't even leave their town, because even for better jobs, because they take joint custody. I even got, just to even highlight, so I just got, again, a great circle of brothers, even some brothers where the women don't take out child support because the brother always handled the business. It was never an issue. You know what I mean? And even watch a couple times when the brother get down and it was no stress because of the history. So that's the circle. But this one brother, like I said, I watched him, great father, to the girl in this area, whatever. But I would keep saying, "What's up? When you gonna see your other? When you gonna get your other child?" Because this is, now that you with me, he was a new friend. He wasn't one of my longtime friends where I ain't got to worry about this, right? So we had gotten close. He was going through some certain things, so I got to know him. But I started asking him, "What's up? When you gonna get your, child?" So one summer goes by, told me he was gonna get the child. Some little BS worked out, didn't work out. I'm like, this ain't making sense. I'm saying to him, this don't add up. Because I say, hey, I don't got no friends to do none of this. This don't make any sense. Now, to his, just to give some of the situation, there was a situation early in their years where when he was up north, the baby mother calls the police on him. So he's bitter, always bitter about that situation, going to jail, kind of over nothing. Mm-hmm. So that part I understood, because it was over nothing. Probably shouldn't have been called. Now I'm hearing this story after, years later. I wasn't his friend at the time, but just based on how he moved with his current child, I pretty much believe the story. I kept saying, you got to let that go, because you can't hurt your child, cause of that. And so he kept saying, I'm worried about that happening again. I said, well, there's other ways to make sure this happens. The next summer, same excuses. I don't talk to that guy no more. And he knows exactly why. And we tight in a whole bunch of other areas. It's the only reason I don't talk to that guy. And so, again, the brothers that you respect, ask them, do they know any men that don't handle their business?
I'll definitely ask.
Yeah, please ask. Because the ones that are making the excuses are in the same circle. The ones you're seeing on social media making the excuses are in the same circle. Again, I won't harp on it, but just test out what I'm telling you amongst the men you respect. Say, do y'all know any brother that ain't handling his business? Just ask them. See what they say.
I'm so bitter and jaded about it. Even if I ask them, I don't really trust their answer, because I know from experience the way that men perceive what other men are doing. So I'm going to ask and I'm going to observe. We'll see.
Definitely check out the show. Definitely check out the show. Because what happens is, it ain't the accountable men that are avoiding you. It's the unaccountable. I'm gonna give you one example from the show, and then we'll move on. So one example I talked about on the show. I don't know if you remember. It's one of I don't watch the TV really or whatever, but it got hit. It made it to social media about one of the love and hip hop shows or something like that. Well, the guy that used to date Nicki Minaj, he ended up having a baby like
Meek
a year
Mill.
ago. No, another guy, the other guy, the guy before Meek Mill. I can't think of his name right now. But anyway, oh God, it was about to come to me. Anyway.
Oh, Safari.
Yeah, that guy right there.
Yeah.
So maybe within the last year or two, maybe 3 years ago, I may have a timeline wrong or whatever. But I remember whoever he's dating now, supposedly
married Erica Mena.
Okay, see, I don't even know the names or whatever because I didn't even get to the details. I just know when she had the baby, what I saw on social media was he was on some trip.
Yeah,
he had took some trip because they had fell out, and from what I could tell from social media, to a degree, supposedly for a good reason, right? And so I heard he's on the trip on that boat. This is what I said about that on this show, on the show that I'm telling you about. I was like, I know for a fact every man on that boat is men like him. Every man on that boat is men like him. Because I don't know one brother in my circle that wouldn't say you done lost your mind regardless of what she done to be here while she's having a baby. I don't even know what she did, whatever. Supposedly it was pretty bad according to social media.
I don't know either.
But we don't care. Nobody in my circle care. There's no way she's gonna be having a baby and have that. And so I'm just throwing out that men that move like that hold each other accountable, believe it or not. Just throwing it out, believe it or not. And again, check out the show. But a couple places I wanted to go. I wanted to share this because I showed this on social media earlier today, and I thought this was an appropriate place to go deeper into this discussion about just accountability, right? In reference to child support, getting your children. So I wanted to share this with you. Let me find it real quick. I got to share the screen. All right, let me share the screen, y'all, so you can see it. It was on my IG page today, and I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts on it. All right, let me share screen, y'all. Bear with me. All right, here we go. Sharing screen. All right, this was a post I put up today. Can you see that from Willie D?
Uh-huh.
All right, so this is something he posted a while back, but I wanted to share this with you and give
That's
you
the same thing I'm asking Willie D. Why? Why?
So you already see it real quick. Absolutely. And this is what I said about it. Again, just showing you the perspective. I said, have a conversation with your sons and ask them this question. Have them articulate an answer to ensure they give it proper thought versus just telling them not to get a woman pregnant and it just go in one ear and out the other.
Absolutely.
And so let me tell you why I'm just suggesting, because of the context that we're in today. So historically, we've come to understand our responsibility and role, because you don't just become a man because you have a dick, right? That's the reality, right? So historically, you've come to understand what manhood was, typically from your father's example at home, or maybe uncles, or your circle of family. Unfortunately, we know that's not our reality today. And so when I saw this from Willie D and posted it, the reason I said have this conversation with your sons, because I'm thinking about the reality is the African American community specifically is matriarchal, if we're honest, right? Is that fair enough? And would you agree with that?
I absolutely disagree with that. Absolutely not. No.
Okay. So when I say it, I'll tell you where I'm getting why I say it is at the end of the day, 81% of our homes are women led from a financial position of leading the home, or in a sense, bringing in half or more of the money. So that's 81%. And so I'm offering that in a lot of cases, this conversation is going to be had with, unfortunately, or if mothers would take this advice, it's going to be a lot of mothers having to have this conversation, because unfortunately there are situations where there's not, in a sense, a lot of fathers in the home. So that's kind of why I was saying that it's matriarchal in the sense that the house is being led financially by the mother. So,
and I would interject and say that patriarchy and matriarchy, number one, are not opposites. Number one, but number two, we live in a patriarchal society, and having a female-led home within a patriarchy does not a matriarchy make. So if you want to say that the home is female-led, then yes. But to describe it as a matriarchy is a misnomer, because a matriarchy involves an entire system, and not just a woman-led home. And particularly when that woman was forced to be in that position.
Okay, fair enough. So I'll say woman-led. No problem. Y'all don't want to. Yeah, we definitely, thanks for the correction. So 81% of our homes are, if you will, woman-led based on the finances of those homes. It's kind of, again, that number is just coming from the finances.
That's a fact.
Yeah. So I'm just highlighting. That's what I was highlighting more importantly than calling it matriarchy or whatever. But I still, to a degree, due to that, I would offer that the influence in that situation is going to come more from the mother. And then obviously there are still situations where plenty of fathers are involved. And then unfortunately, what we're talking about today, there's still situations where fathers are not involved. So in a situation where a father's not involved, then the influence is only coming in from one half of the balance, if you will. So I'm only, and I'm saying all that to point out that prior to where we're at now, where we've had this happen for generations, you typically would get that balance inside of your home. So now that you don't have the balance, that's why I added to what Willie D said, right? Why would you do this? Which again makes sense to you and me both, right? But I took it one step further to say, actually ask your son this question, because what we're doing as a culture, here's the reality, in my opinion, and see if you agree with this, but we're no longer consciously having children in general, not everyone, but I'm just about generally speaking, as a race, if you will, as African Americans, we've lost sight.
As a cultural norm.
Yeah, as a cultural norm, we're no longer consciously having children. Yep. And so me offering my commentary is just a little antidote, if you will, to say, here's some things you can add to the table, because no longer are we as boys learning manhood the natural way. So we end up having to, in a sense, put Band-Aids. So I love Willie D's question.
Yeah.
And then I say, inside of your home, whether you're the mother or the father, you should actually articulate this question to your son.
Agreed.
To make them think about it. Make them actually articulate an answer to you, because what do we typically do? We've had conversations about this on the show where we kind of downplay sex so bad, or just make it so bad that they don't want to talk to us. We don't say a whole lot to them other than don't bring a child home. And we're failing the generation, because here's also what's new for our generation of humans is we wait later for marriage and family anyway. So years ago, you would have already had a family more than likely. You would have already been expected to have a family, be responsible for family, would have had to be taught what that looks like. And I'm not saying that's where we got to go back to. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just talking about in the context of today's time, we have to change the approach, meaning we got to add something to the game because we're not getting it naturally. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. But I thought about back in the day, and even now, my husband's continental, it is extremely taboo for them to have children out of wedlock. It does not happen. If it does, it's a problem. And so what I was thinking about as you were talking about that is that although we did have the cultural norm of having children within wedlock and making, being aware and consciously procreating, that came from a lot of fear. The social pressure of not wanting to be a single mother or not wanting to have a child out of wedlock. So I wonder if we're evolving away from that, if there can be another reason that is you're more focused on consciously creating rather than focused on, I don't want everybody to look at me like I'm crazy because I had a baby out of wedlock, which I think is what the motivation was before. It wasn't that people were so family oriented and, it was that it was completely socially unacceptable for that to happen. And so they didn't want to be the outlier.
That's a fair thought. I'll just throw, kind of put just a slight pushback, just something to think about. But on Continental, you still see very young marriages. Very, I mean,
That's true.
so I'm highlighting that in a sense we are the first people. If let's say we wanted to remain virgins, like there's never been a version of humans that will try to be virgins until they were 27 or 30.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because so I'm just saying, like, but you will see around the world, marriage is still happening a lot younger than in Western societies. So I'm just throwing out the very realistic change of marriage becomes later. Mm-hmm. It almost becomes, if you will, unrealistic to remain a virgin till sex. And then at the end of the day, if you're having sex, there are probably going to be children brought forward, like, or whatever. And what's happening is because we don't have our family structure, we're not thinking about it even into our 20s. We've unfortunately normalized doing it outside of families. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so even when you're conscious of it, it's not even this a teenage, I'm making a mistake here. We're literally within our culture, if you look at the numbers, we're humans have the most babies between the ages of 20 and 30. That's kind of always been the case, right? Mm-hmm. Whatever, even if they got married, had a baby early, most of the babies are still had between 20 and 30. Mm-hmm. So we're still having most of our babies at 20 and 30.
But we're getting married at 40.
Right. But we're consciously having the baby without the concept of doing it inside of a family structure.
Yeah. And that a whole nother can of worms is the family structure and what that means, and the Eurocentric idea of the nuclear family versus the village, that indigenous people traditionally had is a little bit different too. But I think you're right.
Yeah. And then let's talk a little bit of that. Because I remember I saw this on your page one time. I'm glad I got you on here because I was going to text it on your post, and I was like, I don't feel like doing this on social media or whatever. But I remember one time you mentioned the idea of you mentioned on your page that you felt like in nature there wasn't these hierarchies that we have when you were talking specifically about the patriarchy, if you will, but you was like there are not these hierarchies in nature. And I was looking at it, I was like, that's categorically wrong. And I was like, this would be a good show to kind of ask her about that thought when you were saying that you didn't think there were hierarchies in nature, because unfortunately we've evolved into the hierarchies based on how humans have evolved, if you will. We definitely, as early humans, we actually had the least hierarchies less hierarchies than the animal kingdom. Animal kingdom still has right now to this moment. I just wanted to kind of ask your thoughts about I don't know if you remember that post.
I don't really remember the post. We'd have to revisit it, but I definitely did not think, if I said there's no hierarchies in nature, it's not what I intended to portray at all. No, what I'm saying is that generally, when we're talking about hierarchies within the family, people bring up animal hierarchies as if these hierarchies reflect human relationships. Okay. But if you study animals for any amount of time, people will tell you that the way that humans socialize and the way that humans relate is totally different than a lot of animals, even primates.
Okay.
And so to apply those hierarchies is what I was saying to humans is crazy to me. But
that makes sense. I think I misunderstood the post. That's why I'm asking you about it now. You know what I mean? So I misunderstood it as you saying the opposite of that. And I was like, no, but now that makes absolutely sense. You're absolutely right. People do try to make the comparison and not know the history of us as humans, right? Like before farming, humans were egalitarian. There wasn't really a hierarchy, right?
Exactly.
We've only been practicing hierarchies for 10,000 years.
Right.
We've been around for 200,000 years, if you get evolution or whatever.
Right.
So, okay, cool. So that
really, the point that I was trying to make is that the hierarchies that we're experiencing in the social society right now is not indicative of something that humans have always been. It's not like, human nature cemented. You know what I mean? I think that's the point that I was trying to make.
Okay. Well, I was going to ask you more questions thinking you had said something different than that, right? Now I see what you're saying. Because I was like, I took it the wrong way. So that's why I wanted to have a dialogue with you. So you're absolutely right. I just talked about this on the patriarchy show. Like what we're doing now, humans have only been doing for 3% of human existence.
Yeah, 3%.
Yeah, 3%. If you take our human existence and put it on a timeline, this 10,000 years is only 3% of how long we've been here.
Wow.
Yeah. So just to kind of, even put that in perspective. So you're exactly right. I just misunderstood your post that night. So I wanted to share this cut, if we will, from Jordan Peterson, just talking about the family dynamic and diving into what having children consciously could even look like in today's time. Because again, we're up against different factors. We're waiting later. You know what I mean? So it's not realistic to be sexless until you're 35,
Right.
man or woman, right? Let's just keep it a buck about that or whatever. But we're still kind of teaching our babies as if you should or could be. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I want to, but I do want to highlight how important it is so we can figure out, well, how do we do this consciously in this new environment? So that's why this dialogue was worth it to me, if that makes sense.
Yes.
All right, let me share this cut from another screen share. All right, y'all bear with me, y'all. This is going to be an audio only, but I want to make sure everybody hears it. So let me see. Share screen. Then I'm gonna play this. This is a shortcut from Jordan Peterson, and you can give me your thoughts on it once you hear it. All right. No, not that one. This one right here.
Who's Jordan Peterson?
He's a well-known psychologist. Kind of made himself famous on social media now. So I don't know. You may have heard his voice, or definitely look him up after the fact. But you'll hear this cut right now.
What kind of relationship do you have with your father, your real father? It's often ambivalent, right? Because there's an element of him that encouraged you, hopefully, because without the encouragement of your father, man, the world is a dismal place. It's very difficult to be a courageous person unless you have your father in body and spirit behind you. It's very demoralizing. Like, it really kills people not to have their mother. They just don't recover from that. And I think people can recover from a fragmented father relationship, but it's the next worst thing. Because if your father rejects you or doesn't form a relationship with you, it's as if the spirit of civilization has left you outside the walls as of little worth. It's very difficult for people to recover from that. So the father should be an encouraging force, but can be a tyrannical and crushing force. And so that's a very difficult thing to get right, partly because if you're my son, then I should impose the highest standards of behavior on you. And I should always be judging what you're doing. I should be judging it with the aim of making the best in you come forward. But getting that balance exactly right is very difficult. And so it's easy for a father to swing too much into judgment, let's say. And then, of course, mothers can play this role too, to swing too far into the domain of judgment and to be too harsh. And to the degree that the father has his own pathologies, he's going to do that imperfectly.
Well, my father's a formidable person, and like he's really good with little kids. We had a lot of friction when I was a teenager, and that took some time to sort out. But there were complicated reasons for that. Some of them involved ill health of various sorts, and teenage stupidity, and some intransigence on his part because he's quite a stubborn person. But both my parents. I've been blessed with my parents because they're extraordinarily honest people. I can't think of a time, and this is literally the truth, I can't think of a time when I believe that my parents lied to me about anything. And that's a great gift. The other thing that my father bequeathed to me, I would say, when I was a child, was an unshakable confidence that I could do what I put my mind to, put my efforts to. And he truly believed that. There's something that's lodged inside me as an unshakable foundation.
So a couple things that stood out to me now. I want to hear your thoughts. So the first thing that stood out, just when he briefly mentions, children don't really recover, if you will, from a loss of a mother. And he said, not having a father is the next worst thing. So that was one thing that stood out. I think it also highlights why those numbers that we talked about at the beginning of the show kind of exist. At least that's how the world looks at it. And I would agree. I think most African-American males and boys, we are always chasing the fact of whether our father's proud of us. And most of us would never get that answer. That's a reality for a lot of us, even if our father is living, even if the father is in our life. But your thoughts to hearing Jordan Peterson just kind of break down his perspective on how important it is. And again, one last thing, I'm bringing this up because you and I both agree as a culture, we're no longer consciously having our children. So I feel like that's a great reminder to what we're leaving out of the whole picture, to no longer be doing this consciously. Your thoughts, Queen?
That was a really powerful clip. My first thought, honestly, is that this is the psychologist is a white male, right?
Yes.
My thought was, this is definitely from a white male perspective, although it applies to us. I'm also thinking about, like, I immediately thought about what is the name of those people who live somewhere in the Himalayas, who are like the last remnants of a matriarchal society.
I know it's two that are very noted around the world, but I don't know where they are.
I can't remember the name of the group.
Yeah, I just know there are two that are noted or still to this day.
But my point was is that I'm thinking about how culture shapes our expectations of what our parents do and who our parents are to us, and how trauma can occur to somebody who has a certain cultural expectation, but another person may experience that and they don't have any trauma about it because they don't have the same cultural expectation. And that's what I thought about. I thought about how hurtful it is, definitely hurtful for any child to in this society to be without their father, because we have this cultural expectation of a nuclear family, and everything. The nuclear family is the cornerstone of society, so everything is predicated upon that. But when you have a society like that matriarchal society, sometimes the children don't even know who their biological father is. It is the mother's menfolk's job to rear that child. It's like more of a community role where children belong to everybody. Every man fathers the child, and the mother's close menfolk are the ones who raise the child. So it just really struck me how although that father trauma is extremely real in this society, how different that might look with other cultural expectations.
No, it makes a lot of sense. The reality too, they're only, again, I know there's two noted. I think there's at the most like 2 to 4 matriarchal societies of the however many different societies are noted in the world, right? But I know there's 2 notable ones. Probably the one, definitely the one you're talking about is, noted, very, very well noted. But the reality of human evolution is why we have the hierarchies due to the idea of land ownership. Mm-hmm. So I definitely can see when humans were more egalitarian, that is going to be completely different because everybody takes care of the children. Mm-hmm. The whole group, the whole tribe or whatever is nomadic, running around. You know what I mean? And, a lot of people don't like to accept this, but early humans really had sex like rabbits. They were going to live 30, 35 years any damn way.
They was polyed in the mug.
Yeah, it had to be. You know what I'm saying? They just trying to populate and survive because they was only living 30, 35 years. You know what I mean? So a lot of people don't accept that, that real evolution. And so I'm just only pointing out that I think you're absolutely right. With a different cultural expectation, then you don't have what you see. The reality in this, our reality in the current state of, because once you get land ownership, you get patriarchy. And patriarchy, I mean, it's not the only part of it, but a big part of it is, if I'm going to leave this land, it better be my child.
Right.
So then that's when you start getting the rule of, the rule of the father. That's what patriarchy means, the rule of the father, if you will, right? So with that reality, and if we want to leave resources, while we're still living in that type of world where you can own land, this is going to be the reality. So I love what you're saying, but in that reality, it's powerful, and that's the experience. And so I would offer the most important decision you will ever make in your life is who's going to be the parent of your child. Mm-hmm. That's whether you male or female.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing you will ever do in your life.
In this society. It is.
Ever in your life. Right? And now we might do it on a whim. We might be like Willie D said, you dumping in somebody, you don't even want the woman.
After the club. Don't even know her last name.
Shooting up the club. So we've reduced the most important compost thing you could ever do. Not everybody, of course, but too much so to where even when we have this dialogue about what does accountability look like, whether it be the male or the woman, what I always love to point out is it only takes one, because within the gender war, all you see, and I think this is very detrimental, and I want to throw this out to you. I think it's very detrimental, and it's easy to do on social media, and we see it all the time, is everybody's been deflecting and constantly talking about what the other gender should do.
Mm-hmm.
It ends up being a complete waste of time, because you have this idea, well, if the other gender would do this, it would change things. But as far as consciously having children, it only takes one of you being responsible. So while it takes two to have a child, it only takes one of you to be responsible.
Yeah, but the problem is that responsibility is usually laid square on the woman. The accountability is usually laid square on the woman. But yeah, it only takes one person to say no or yes.
So here's a reality of these times. So the realities of the time, because I talked about this on another show where I one of the other Queens of Intellect members, Deasia Robinson, we had this dialogue about dad beat dads. And I was going to play it on here, but the audio is not loud enough. So
I want to hear that. Oh.
Yeah, I still can send it to you. You can hear it yourself, but it ain't loud enough to be, I'll send it to you. It's like and we had this conversation about what I consider the biggest red flag. And the biggest red flag we talked about was I don't know if she was asking me a question about that if you're in a situation as a woman, and I told her this is the game I would give my daughter. I don't have any children, but I hope to have a family still. But this is a game I would give my daughter. I said, if you get in a situation and you're about to go there, and you get one of these guys who's asking to not use a condom, or maybe I'll use condoms, or to take it off or whatever, I said at that moment, it should be one of the biggest red flags you would ever get. And I said, regardless of how y'all got there, I understand you're both in the moment or whatever. That's devoid of judgment. But whatever it takes in that moment, get yourself out of, granted, this ain't a dangerous man or somebody that's trying to harm you. Obviously, that's a kind of extreme situation. I know that could be a reality too. You know what I mean? In that situation, you're in danger anyway, because it's a man that's willing to hurt you, right?
Right.
So I just want to kind of be clear that I'm not talking about that type of situation, because you know what I mean? But in a situation like that, get out of that situation, because here's the mistake when we talk about that responsibility gets laid solely on the woman. That reality is never going to go away. And so I think it is important that we speak to it in an extremely realistic way. And what I told her was, the reason that's a red flag is because if you are with some man, young man or even older man, that's willing to be willy-nilly in that moment and do what Willie D said, right? If that man, he's showing you he's absolutely irresponsible with himself.
Mm.
So we are up. So I think, and this is the only, I know this is coming from a man's perspective, but I want to hear your thoughts on it. But it is crazy to me that we expect the man that's irresponsible in that moment to somehow take the responsibility for a child later. And so the game I'm giving my daughter is,
how can he be responsible for a human being?
Yeah. So the reason I'm giving my daughter the game, that's the biggest red flag, is because he's showing you right there he's irresponsible.
But here's the thing, Montoya, that you're not taking into account, is that we're talking about young people. The human brain is not fully developed until the age of 30. Young people don't have physically, biologically, the ability. They don't have their brain has not formed to the point where they can be completely rational, make logical decisions, and the part of their brain that controls impulse has not been developed yet. So we're talking about people having sex in their teens, early 20s, and they don't have the life experience, and they don't have the biological capability to make sound decisions. So
go ahead. I thought you were finished. Finish, please.
No, go ahead.
So other cultures ain't doing this. What their kids doing with the unformed brains? Abortion. Nah, not to the degree that unfortunately we do.
No, I'm probably not to the degree that we do, but they do it. But you're right. But we don't. Again, there's a difference between a cultural expectation, a fear-based, religious-based, my parents will literally kill me, like honor killing, I'll die. That kind of fear is much different than a person who doesn't have any cultural expectation, because you're talking about, it's not that they are able to make more rational decisions, they're literally afraid. So I don't think that somebody in another culture is making a more rational decision than another young person is. It's that we don't have the cultural pressure that other cultures have.
Yeah, I know that's definitely very much why Asians only have out of wedlock at 17%, because they have a lot of pressure and shame.
Is it 17%? Because that's high.
Yeah, that's every.
Oh, you mean in this country?
Yeah, in this country. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Whatever. Yeah. Their numbers are going up, but they're starting to have a lot more suicide over in Asia. But in this country, it's 17%.
Wow.
For that particular group, and they're very low compared to everybody else. Whites are at 38%. Hispanics are 54, and we're at 73. Or maybe moving to 74 now. I mean, just keeping it above. But so I should say, but so while I understand that, what happens is, again, the goal is to have that there are, what I'm saying now is still a realistic dialogue for today's time. So what's happening is you got the kids not getting this game. So I'm just throwing out, we have to come up with dialogues like, ask your son this question for Willie D, because a parent probably usually ain't comfortable taking Willie D's question and asking their son that. So I'm just showing that there are ways we can become more conscious, and we got to come up with things that if we use them in mass, every son ain't going to listen. But for the sons that do, we've saved the son to get mature enough to make an informed decision and become a conscious parent. So I'm just throwing out, you know what I mean? Since you're not growing up in the natural family the way we would like, right? That's the reality. So what can we do in today's time? And I would offer that just being honest about, as unfortunate with the fact that more than likely a woman's going to be stuck with that, instead of complaining about it, let's say that out loud, because at the end of the day, the game we got to give now is how to avoid irresponsible people, men and women. Like, that's not the game we're giving. What we're doing is complaining about the irresponsible people not being responsible. Like, that's the dialogue on social media every day. If you really put in perspective what we're watching, every day, it's complaints about irresponsible people being irresponsible. So the game in today's time has to be honest dialogue about how to avoid those irresponsible people. And so what happens is, I'd much rather a girl hear my red flag than be in that situation and have never heard it. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And then tell me how you're going to make men more responsible.
So what happens is, I just said, you take the Willie D situation, you ask your sons and make them think about, why would you make this mistake? Because the reality of that two situation, it only takes one to be responsible. If the man's responsible, there's no baby. If the girl's responsible, there's no baby. Nothing changes the reality that more than likely she's stuck with the child. And even if stuck with the child means just having it, just that whole ordeal. So that reality becomes just, you got to train one to be responsible, because at the end of the day, what I'm teaching my son is how to be a man, have a family. That's what I'm teaching my son. But teaching my son that still doesn't ensure that there are women and boys and girls who have not been taught this. So what I'm teaching is for how to avoid the people that have not been taught these things, right? I got to teach my son how to avoid the sisters that get him caught up. He may not listen, but I still got to give him the game, right? I got to give my daughter the game for how to avoid those type of men. And because that example is unfortunately the highest level of irresponsibility. It's the highest level of responsibility for my son in that same scenario. Because I remember my mother was on me. So, my mother was on me from an early age. So it's really why I don't have no brother, thanks to my mother. But I definitely had women ask me to take it off. So me just simply saying no and they still let me. It was that simple.
Mm.
It was just that simple. So for me, I was still able to enjoy. I'm telling my daughter, get the hell out of there, because this guy is showing you. And if you have a child with that guy, right, it's actually crazy for us to expect. But we're mad at the type of men who have their brains hadn't formed yet, or still immature, or never been taught what manhood really looks like. Because we talked about this on the show Saturday, that without a father, you end up getting it from your peers. What the hell do your peers know? So we're basically seeing the results of what we're seeing out here, because a bunch of boys learn from a bunch of other boys. So the things that we're most frustrated about, which goes back to what I was saying, we're out here yelling at a bunch of irresponsible people for not being responsible. That's literally what we're doing when we're focused on the other gender. Uh-oh, I lost her. I wanted to hear her thoughts, so I was about to close this thing out. Hope she comes back on. Anybody out there listening, if y'all want to jump on with me, I'm going to read this piece from my upcoming book, Just My 3 Cents. I just finished final edits today. So got to get a new cover. I changed the name of the book. It was called Just My 3 Cents. It's now called Re-Education of the Negro. Hopefully, Oshun jumps back on for this last part. But if not, I'm going to share this piece from the actual book. And know that this is coming soon. I just got to get my cover, and we're going to start pre-sales hopefully pretty soon. Maybe Oshun gets back on to hear this piece so we can end this. So this is, again, a piece from my book talking about the very thing we're talking about right now. Would have loved for y'all to jump on. I didn't really say it a lot because I had a guess. It was, normally I'm in the habit of saying y'all jump on with me because it's usually just me for the Just My 3 Cents. All right, let me share my screen here. Hold on, I don't have to share my screen for this. All right, let me find it. All right. Give me a second, y'all. I'm pulling up this piece. I had it pulled up, and I guess I went away from it. I think this is it. Come on. Where is it at? Dang, I had it lined up. Give me a second, y'all. I got to find the piece now. I thought I had it lined up. Guess I didn't. All right. First. Oh, man, what is it called? Oh, man, I wanted to share this piece with y'all. I had it pulled up. I must have went off. I was doing edits, and I think I moved it by accident. So now I got to find it. Give me a second, y'all. I want to end the show with this. I don't know. Oh, shoot. Jump back on. Father, let me go all the way to the top. And I wanted to end the game with this piece. I literally had this thing set up. I must have moved it when I did some edits. Didn't realize it. Give me a second, y'all. Fatherless generation. Oh, God. All right, here we go. I think I see it. Okay, all right. I ain't gonna waste y'all time. I can't believe I lost this piece. I had this thing set up to go. All right, let me see if Oshun jump back on. I'm jumping between screens. All right. Oh, she came back on. Cool. All right, let me join you back on. I'm trying to find this piece I was gonna end it with, and I got somebody that jumped on with us. All right. William, so you just jumped on. Did you want to jump in and say something?
Yeah, man, y'all having an excellent conversation, bro.
Thank you, bro.
Listen, I was just having this conversation the other day with my homie. You know what I'm saying? And I got on late, and I was like, damn, this is the same conversation we were having.
Wow.
And it's so dope. And when I saw what Willie D said, that's exactly what we were talking about. And so it was funny because my perspective, right? And this is just my perspective, right? My perspective is we do this, like I was telling him, we do this with prenups. We do this in business. We do this when we have an agreement, right? Before the act. It's like what you're saying, Montoya. We're having conversations about bad behavior after the bad behavior, right? And so we argue and we fuss about what's happening after, when if we teach what we need to do before, like what I'm gonna teach my daughter is, I'm a businessman. So what I'm gonna teach my daughter is, look, ask that man if he's willing to be financially responsible for 18 years. In the event, if we're gonna have casual sex, in the event that we build something together, which is a child, right? You need to be fit. You need, before I give you this box, right? You need to sign this paper that says you're going to be you're okay with being financially accountable for 18 years. He's either going to say hell to the nah, or he's going to say, baby, I'm with it. If it happens, it happens. I'm willing to be with you if that happens. And that's a signal to her, just like you're saying. That's a signal to her to say, if he goes, hell no, I ain't doing it, then why would you do it? So the accountability is there for both. And I guarantee you, especially from a man's perspective, if you tell a man he got to sign a piece of paper to be financially accountable for 18 years in case something happened, he's going to have less casual sex because there's going to be more accountability to the action that could happen. Now, this doesn't take anybody's choice away. Everybody still has the same choice. It's just now you're liable and accountable for the choice. So if the woman decides, hey, don't worry about it, you don't have to sign it, she can still have sex with him, but he's not financially tied to having to do it. That's accountability, right? So now both parties are going in with the accountability before the bad behavior happens, and something, it's not bad behavior, but you know what I'm saying, before the outcome of what we haven't agreed to. So it's about accountability. And that's exactly what Willie D was saying. He was like, why would you do that with someone that you're not willing to either be with, right? In the case of something like that happening, or be financially responsible for something you created for 18 years. You got guys out here not being accountable. So yeah, they're going to smash and they're going to dash. That's what's going to happen. And I got a daughter. You know what I'm saying? So I got to teach her that. Look, there's niggas out here it's men out here who going to smash and they're going to dash. How are you going to hold them accountable? How are you going to be accountable? And that's what we need to get to. Like it's business to a certain extent. These are children. These are children that have no say. They have no say in the matter. So we're out here being unaccountable, having casual sex after the club, drunk sex, just to do something. And we're creating these long-term people who are going to have issues because the man, the woman, it's both sides. So what my opinion was, if we do it that way, everybody's accountable. Everybody still has choice in the matter. Because I saw a video, and it was what got me on this. I saw a video. So the guy said, let me ask you a question. And the guy said, should a man have a choice in abortion, right, for his child with the woman? Should he have a choice? And the lady said, yeah, he should have a choice. And then she said, but ultimately, he can have a say. He said, say. He said, should he have a say? And the lady said, yeah, he can have a say, right? But then he said, well, ultimately, and then she said, yeah, ultimately, it's my choice. And then he said, okay, well, let me follow that up with this. He said, should the man be financially held responsible for that baby if he does not have that choice? And she thought about it. She exhaled. She was like, that's a good question, right? She was like, that's a good question. Should he be financially held responsible if he does not have a choice, right? Which is a great question. And she thought about it, and ultimately she said, yes, he should be. And I was like, wow, that's crazy, because I get it on both sides. I get it. But this is trying to handle a problem after the problem has been created, when we both weren't trying to create what was created in the first place. You understand what I'm saying? So it's like, I thought about my daughter. Immediately, I thought about my daughter, and I said, you know what? I'm gonna just have to teach her the right way. I'm gonna have to be frank. I'm gonna have to be honest, and I'm gonna have to tell her, look, if this guy is not willing to commit to be accountable before the action, we have to have these conversations.
Let me hear Oshun's thoughts on this stuff. Thank you for jumping in with us.
Yeah, no doubt.
What you're hearing, Oshun? I'm not gonna keep you too much longer, but I want to hear your thoughts. The brother jumped on here. I was about to get off because I missed you or whatever, but since he's on here, let's see what you think about what he's saying. I know William; he's one of our members, actually.
Okay, brother, what's your name? Because I don't think we met before.
My name's William Agnew. Nice to meet you, Oshun.
William, nice to meet you as well.
Yes, nice to meet you.
You said a mouthful. I would just be curious about when you said sign a piece of paper that says I'll be financially responsible for the next 18 years. Are you saying that we have a whole system in which that piece of paper now means something? Like, how would that be enforceable, I guess is what I'm asking.
I mean, it's just an idea, but I look at everything through contractual agreement, right? And the problem is, and those contracts are designed to hold people accountable for what they agree to when they go into that relationship. And I look at relationships the same no matter what it is, whether it's business, whether it's personal, whether it's, intimate. It's all the same. It's contractual, right? We do contractual things in all of our relationships, whether we're getting married, whether we do a prenup. And I think what's missing in children and having children in terms of this relationship, whether it's casual sex, which is most of what this happens to be when this problem happens. It's like, if we can teach the ones who have the most control are obviously the women. The women are, in my opinion, and it's strictly from my opinion, women decide who's gonna have sex. Women, it decides sex, right? At the end of the day, like, if sex is gonna be had, it's a woman's choice for the most part, right? In regards to, who's gonna have the final say whether we're having sex or not. You know what I'm trying to say. So with that being said, yes, I think if we teach our children, I think we can teach them. I don't think their brain is not developed enough where we can't teach them and have some type of maybe system, right, that we implement culturally, where we say, look, if you're going to have casual sex, right, you have not gotten married, so you don't have a contract, right? So you're having children outside of contractual obligation to what could happen. That's an easy conversation, in my opinion, for a child that you love. And I think it's easy to understand. I've been on here for 2 minutes. It's not complex. You guys understand exactly what I'm saying and where I'm coming from. It makes sense. I know you guys are more, intelligent and developed, but I don't think this is anything that's like, right? They understand that. They will understand that. And with that being said, yes, I think culturally, this doesn't have to be a universal law. This can be a cultural law where we've had this problem. We see with this, the same thing Montoya is talking about. This is a problem. We're never going to fix this problem because there's no accountability.
So let me jump in real quick. Let me jump in real quick and let Oshun, maybe she got some more questions. So what I hear, Oshun, just real quick, is just like, it's kind of what I was just offering, that there's just new dialogue that's needed in today's time. So even when I hear him offering this and teaching this to his daughter, if you will, and if she takes her father's advice, I personally just like it, just from a cultural, here's the standard. And if she listens to his advice, like you said, she easily runs off the easy no good. Now, even this is no guarantee. Let's keep it above. But at least she's running off the easy no goods if she were to follow it. And again, I just hear it as a new thing for today's time, because I don't think we have language that's helping the children today. Your thoughts, Oshun?
I'm just trying to imagine being a young person. You meet somebody, you're vibing, y'all Netflix and chilling, and then you like, bam, with a contract, for something that you're going into something because you're vibing with somebody, you want to, and you're doing what comes naturally for young people to do. It feels a little bit extra to add a contractual agreement to something that's such a natural occurrence to human beings. There's got to be something else we can do besides like, hey, brother, sign on the dotted line right here.
I get it, Oshun, that you're totally right about that 100%. But here's what we don't do. We don't have dialogue about with our children about the problem of children having children, right? And the essence of everything that entails, and which they totally understand. They get it. They're not above understanding stepchildren and my dad. They learn that. Society teaches them that as soon as the family is broken, and so we're teaching them after the fact of the problems of a child being born. So if we don't have to connect it straight to the contract, right? But when you understand the essence of children having children without the rights, children can understand that concept. And I think we're not culturally, we're not teaching our children about the problems that the children are having when mom and dad are not at home, and why children don't have mom and dad. My children, the first thing they connect to is mom and dad. So The first thing they're going to want to understand is, how do I keep from not having a mom and dad, and how do I keep this thing going where I have a mom and dad? And they will buy into that. And once you connect the behavior to that lack, right, then they'll get it. They'll get it just like that. And then they'll go, wait, no, because this is why. And if you help them understand why, it's all about the why. It's one thing we teach, the why before the how or anything else. Why, right? And once they understand the why, and they can at that age, I promise you they can, then they'll connect the behavior. They'll probably adopt the behavior without even
right.
It'll be yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like
I'll give you a real life example of, I have a video. One of my most watched videos is about this very thing, is just making your children understand like marriage before children, for example, was that video. And it was just, what can you say? Because at the end of the day, what your children can understand is, if let's say you're a single parent, well, you love how well, if you love this about what we're doing, this could look like this if we were together. A child can understand, like, I will want the best I could ever give my child. 100%. A child can understand that. And 100%. Then by having that conversation over and over, then they get wise enough to adopt conversations or adopt actions that follow suit with, my mom always told me to. It's no different than how a lot of people, whether they realize it or not, in their up until 25 or 30, whatever they do with credit cards is what they learn with their family doing. Their family didn't even talk to them about credit cards, but they did the exact same thing as their parents through viewing.
100%.
So the dialogue
that's a great
that
example.
are missing, because we don't have a dialogue other than if you're in church, stay a virgin or whatever, which is, again, as we talked about earlier, is not realistic now that people don't get married young. We're not having dialogue. So again, it's not about whether something's perfect, but the dialogues we're failing to have.
And it's not going to be, it's not going to be perfect. You're going to have people who opt out. You're going to have people who, they're not going to do it. But the idea is to minimize the amount of casual sex that's being had, right? Because casual sex now is at an all-time it's crazy. Like, we just no accountability. Like, we're going out to the club to have casual raw sex. You know what I'm saying? And you're not even thinking, there's not even that idea of what could be or what could happen. Nobody is tied to any accountability. So it's just adding responsibility to more people who would likely be more responsible, which curves, right, that data, right? And that's what all we're trying to do. We know we can't come up with a perfect system. There is no perfect system, right? There are going to be children out of wedlock, for sure. The question is, how can we reduce, right, the casualty, right, that we see, because we're having so much casual. Everything is becoming more. As a matter, if you look at the younger generation now, it's more casual. They've gotten so brazen that they're like, if she ain't putting out, she gonna get out. And they saying this on social media.
They said that 25 years ago. There were songs that said the exact same thing, like, 30 years ago.
Brothers said it to each other, but these boys, it's a way of life now. It's it's a cultural thing that they are adapting, that other young men who wouldn't normally be this way are going, you know what, it might be something to that. And I got a daughter, man. I got a daughter that's got to go out here and live in this world for the next, 50 to 60, 70 years. And I ain't trying to have her be part of this new way of sexual appropriation that has no accountability for nothing.
And also include this. we no longer find a father necessary as a culture. So add that on top of it. Yeah. So
it's going that way.
Yeah, because here's the other thing. The other thing is, because even with what you're saying, here's still a reality, William. Still, the majority of babies are consciously being had by 20 and 30-year-olds. Right. Because teenage sex, believe it or not, with all the casual sex, teenage pregnancy still went down. Mm-hmm. That's part of languaging that happened during our era. So you see the result. To William's point, if you at least speak to it, you can curb things. Teenage pregnancy has went down, but now that there's this concept of fathers are not necessary as a norm.
Do you want to talk about the culture of how it came to be that fathers are not necessary, how that became a cultural norm? Do we want to get into that? Or is that a different show?
I want to respect your time. If you want to talk about it, you can please. I don't mind you jumping in.
I gotta wrap it up in a minute. Okay,
yeah. If you want to jump in, please jump in. Let's talk about it if you want. That's up to you.
To what William was saying, I'm hoping that what you were saying was not literal. You were just saying that we need to have some sort of cultural expectation of accountability. And I understand that completely. I wouldn't necessarily teach my daughter to break out a contract She 21, just trying to, figure things out. I don't know that's going to be the best way, but definitely the culture of self-accountability, even though they're not at their peak, even though they haven't matured all the way, they can still understand I have to be accountable for myself and my body. So I agree with wholly. I think the point about fathers not being necessary is a direct result. It's the same thing that happened when people say that Black women say, I don't need no man. Right. And that never happened. Black women never said we didn't need no man. Black women have always gone to bat for Black men. What Black women said was, Black men have been a liability to me. I don't need a man who's a liability to me. I need a man who's an asset to me. That's a totally different statement than I don't need a man. And so the same thing happened with fathers. If you don't make yourself useful, people will view you as not necessary. Mm-hmm. If you are absent to the tune of 78% or whatever the percentage is, people are going to be like, oh, okay, well then, that's optional. So I think that concurrent with the realization that fathers are important to the family structure, fathers have to be important. They have to make themselves important. They have to be. They have to do things within the family unit that renders them invaluable again.
So I'll say here's a reality within the culture. Obviously because we kind of harping on the teenagers and the younger people, whatever. So because there's so many young people, obviously, who haven't had children, here's still a reality, despite reality as far as Black men specifically. The reality is, for men that have chosen to have children, there's more of them are responsible than are not. Like, that's still a reality, because half the men don't even have children. Now some of that half will fall into the unresponsible half, and some of that half will fall into the responsible half. But I'm just saying, if we're gonna, speak to the numbers, the majority of Black men are responsible. That is.
What numbers are we talking about, Montoya? What numbers are we talking about?
Okay, so 33% of Black men are married. Okay. You got 50.
You mean all ages?
Yeah. This is just all ages or whatever. So 33% of Black men are married.
Okay.
51 don't have children. And we know some of the marriage had some prior to marriage or even during marriage, but that ain't the majority of those that are married. The majority of those are married have their children with their wives.
And the rest of them gay, so they don't count. No,
I'm just saying, if you do those, but
I'm just joking. That was a jokey joke.
Yeah, we do jokes on mental dialogue. That's it. It is what it is. But I'm just saying. So in itself, half of the men don't have children.
Yeah. Right.
And then of the half that's left, 33% of them are married or whatever. So that leaves, unfortunately, you got the 17% that have a whole bunch of babies with different women. They do. They have a most.
No, we have to go back over. We have to go back over these numbers again when we have more time.
Those numbers are
that's not.
So what's 33% of men are married. That's the Black demographics. I'll go to blackdemographics.com. You'll see 33% are married. 51% of black men don't have children.
That's all age groups?
Yeah. That's all age groups. That's 51% of men that live don't have children. But that's pretty normal. Half the world doesn't have children. That's always been the case. Like, that's always the case. It's 50% of the world. Like, it's always that's always the case. So that's any demographic. You go through any demographic, half of them don't have children based on all ages. So that part's normal, that half the people don't have children. You know what I'm saying? But within other cultures, you have a lot more marriages. 33% is low compared to Hispanics. They have 48% married, whatever. You know what I mean? Whites have 52% married. So 33% is a low number. But I'm just saying, since half the brothers half the Black men don't have kids, and another 33% are married, the reality is, this is an unfortunate reality in our community. That other percentage has a bunch of babies. They impregnate 40% of the girls. You know what I'm saying? So I'm just saying
17% of men are impregnating 40% of women.
Yes.
We'll do another show. We'll do the show on this when I have a little time to go into that. I remember doing a little research on this before, and I remember finding that was inaccurate, but I can't remember exactly the number, so I won't speak on it right now. But we'll go over it again.
So if only 17% have 2 baby mamas, that's 34% right there. It ain't, the numbers actually add up. I don't. The more you get to be with me on the show, William will tell you this. I don't play around with fake numbers. I am very well researched with the numbers. I'll send you the demographics to show you that. Yeah, but that is the unfortunate reality. You know what I mean? But that's how crime works. Like even like what we're talking about, we humans never think about this, but we talk, like I always talk about how dumb black on black crime is when it's actually literally 1%, less than 1% of people that do murders, right? So they just show you the numbers from that way, but crime gets done by a few people, but they have multiple victims. So they end up affecting a whole bunch of people, and we'll be acting like, look at what we're out here doing. And it's literally just the few people that's doing the crime. That's how murder works, hot spots. Even in Chicago, if you know what a hot spot is, you'll realize it ain't the majority of black people in Chicago. It's just a few in the hot spot that's doing half the murders. That's how the numbers literally play out. So unfortunately, yeah, that's 17%. If they just double it, but then some of them got more than one, so that's how it gets to 40%. Unfortunately, but you can look it up. I ain't mad. I know the numbers are back up.
I need to reconcile the numbers, because how are 72% of black children being born out of wedlock? That's I'll delve. We'll talk about this another time.
Let's say you and I are kicking it. We're not married, and you have 3 children. That's a different number. But if you have 3 children, that's 3 children and we're not married, even though there are 3 children and we're not married. So you get to 70. You see what I'm saying? So again, I don't, the numbers, I know how to do them. So the 72% is how many are, because then you see what I'm saying? So you got a bunch of sisters who have out of wedlock marriages with one guy. I'm just saying that there's 17% of brothers that have a bunch of multiple girls. You know what I mean? So that's how the numbers definitely match up. But I'm just saying the 72%, if you see, plays out to just how many children are being born out of wedlock. You know what I mean? That could be just you and me could have 3. Those 3 get put in that 72%. So just showing you how the numbers play out. But I'm gonna read this quick to both of y'all. Y'all give me one last thought and we out of here. So this is from my upcoming book, Re-Education of the Negro. This piece is called, if I remember, for those that know, I started this show to promote my book, but I ended up changing the name of the book. It was called Just My 3 Cents. Now it's called Re-Education of the Negro.
I had no idea. Surprise.
Yep. I changed the name. Yep. So now it's Black Socrates. Well, this is a piece from the upcoming book. I just finished the final edit right before this show. Well, with my editor.
Nice.
Yep. Black Socrates Speaks, Carry Your Weight. And in parentheses, the subtitle is The Imbalance of a Fatherless Generation. This was written back in 2014. So this was back when I was 40 years old. I'm not 40 anymore, but you'll hear a reference to that. I must shout out my mother, Phyllis Smith, for the incredible job she did raising me into the man I am today. I love her dearly. It's a shout out heard throughout the Black community anytime a Black man tells his story. Fortunately, my mother didn't have to do it entirely on her own. The village of my grandparents and my small town played a huge role in my success. I miss you, Stephen and Katie Smith, my grandparents. I'm a college-educated brother with a steady job, a car, and an apartment, and sadly enough, these minor things equate to success in many poor communities. Although at 40 years old and relatively successful by these meager standards, I always wonder if my father is proud of me. It's a question too many sons and daughters in the Black community spend a lifetime trying to answer. I sometimes wonder what my life would be like had my father not just been in my life, but at home every day. Unfortunately, as I peruse the landscape of the Black community, I know 73% of our children are born outside the union of marriage. I know there is currently a debate on what constitutes a marriage and how we would define the nuclear family in the future. However, for the purposes of this writing, I am not asking those questions, but rather reminding Black men and women how important marriage is to the development and success of their children. I am one of the lucky ones. My father became a staple in my life during my high school years. I spent every weekend working at my dad's to get away from the natural arguments my mother and I would have during the week as a rebellious teenager testing my manhood. Their differences in approach brought the balance I needed to understand manhood better. I have other college friends who tell incredible stories about their weekend dads. A weekend made a world of difference for us to have our fathers in our lives versus the Black children who never or rarely see their fathers. I rail against the prison industrial complex and its devastation on the Black community. We currently have over 500,000 Black fathers sitting in prison. However, if you are a free Black man with children, what is your excuse? Although I am single without children, I've heard the horror stories of many brothers and their baby mamas. I know they are real, but the more important question is just how important are your seeds to you? Regardless of the interactions with your baby mother thus far, as a man, what message will you instill in your children to ensure this cycle stops? When will Black men take our place and carry the weight? The current cycle of fatherless homes is not only creating a generation of sons who never learned to be men, but also a generation of daughters who never learned to let men be men. Many sisters have had to figure it out all on their own. However, our Black children desperately need their fathers to return home. If you can lay with her but can't stay with her, she should not be the mother of your child. Our Black children can no longer depend on one parent to get a fair shot in America. Size this up. People who finish high school, work full-time, and wait to have children until they are married and 21 years or older have a 72% chance of joining the middle class and just a 2% chance of being poor. That comes from The Economist. The sad thing is there are not enough Black families who meet these seemingly simple standards. I lost my spot. Think about this. At high school graduations across the country, for every 10 Black children that walk across the stage, only 2 of them have married biological parents in attendance.
Wow.
Once you include divorce. The 2 with married parents are expected to reach a certain level of success. For the other 8, success is the exception. Healthy marriage before children is essential and must become the new mantra of the Black community. Just my 3 cents. All I ask is that you think. Oshun, any thoughts? And then I'll get some thoughts from William and we out of here.
I'm looking forward to getting this book.
It sounds good. It sounds good, bro. You're on the right.
So,
yeah, I will definitely be supporting.
Yeah, definitely.
Actually,
so, go ahead, please.
I didn't know that you were wrapping it up. I thought you were like me and a procrastinator and saying you was gonna write a book. I didn't know you had the editors and everything. I'm gonna need your help, brother, because I got a few books up here. I need to get out.
We got some people that can help you even better than, because my process took long, especially once I renamed the book or whatever, and I made a mistake in my editing, so it took longer. Like I just made a huge mistake, so and that was on me. Whatever. So it just, because I was trying to put it out last year, but I sent like the wrong version. Then I had to get a couple more editors. So it just took me a lot longer. But I literally just finished final edits today. And now I'm going to get somebody. Yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah. But it's just commentaries that hopefully create dialogue. So we already done a dialogue, so we're not going to do it here. But William, any thoughts about what you heard? Anything that sparked from that?
You mean in response to your book or just?
Yeah, just piece. Yeah, because the piece is set up to have dialogue. So just any thoughts anything that came to your mind when you heard that piece?
100%. I just think, it's a good, in my mind, I saw you. So I typically, when I listen to people speak, I close my eyes.
Okay.
And so I just envision you going through your process of being a single, a child of a single home mom, and growing and starting to realize that dad is not in your life, and wondering, right, through your accomplishments, right, how your dad would receive those accomplishments and experience those. And that's the whole part of it. Like same thing with me. Like that's the whole part of it. It's just the experience. And then, I can see, I want to hear more going through that process of growth and how each part of your adolescence to manhood is impacted by men in your life, not just your father, because I'm sure you added that part too, right? Where it's not just my father's missing, but how these men who were very influential in my life impacted my life also. So, I think it's dope. I dope read. It sound really good, man. I'm impressed. I'm not surprised, but I am impressed.
Thank you. So I'm gonna say this real quick because we had this before you got on. So Oshun, I'm gonna have a listen to the show. I don't know if you heard that. Did you hear the show Why Good Men Can't Check Fuck Boys? Did you hear that one, William?
No, I didn't hear that one.
Okay, so I'm just sharing. I gave her a little task. Accountable men and unaccountable men literally are all in water in real life. They never interact together, and she doesn't know that. But she says she's adamant that that's not the case. But when we're immature and want to be unaccountable, who's the last men we hang around? The men that's gonna check you.
Yeah, accountable men.
You're not hanging around those guys at all because you don't want to be checked for your fuckboy shit. I mean, they avoid us. We don't avoid them. They avoid us.
Birds of a feather, man. They flock together. That's,
And most sisters don't know that. So they're always saying men don't hold each other accountable, not knowing the men that's causing the havoc are not around the men who are accountable.
Yeah.
And we can't even chase them down if we want to. We can check them in the spot if they do something in the spot, but they won't hang with us.
Actually, when you see men fight or physically fight a lot of times, it's because of that conflict, right? Typically, you have accountable men trying to integrate with the opposite, and that conflict causes it goes all the way a lot of times. And women don't do that. Women don't get to that point where they be like, I ain't fucking with that bitch. You know what I'm saying? That's how they are. But we will, smash heads. And so, that when you see that, a lot of times it's the conflict of accountability and lack of accountability.
And because that's such a reality, what accountable men do is start avoiding places where they would have to get in conflicts.
Where they would have to get in
because they know it's going to come to that. Exactly. Because these knuckleheads. Because here's the 100%, thing: 100%. When you're a knucklehead or have never been taught any level of accountability, it don't matter if I talk to you or check you.
Right.
As a man, their response is, "Well, fuck you."
Right.
They don't care what they've done is out of place.
Right. Right.
So we literally are all in water, and people literally have. And so what I find with most accountable men is we're all mentoring because we're trying to catch the boys when they're young. Because there's nothing we can do about the man that wants to just be out here and run through women. That's nothing you can do about him because he's not going to listen.
Where the mentors at? Every single organization that I'm in is begging for Black men.
So here's where they're at. Here's the real answer to that. We have so many kids, we can't cover them. That's the real reason.
But you said the majority of Black men, this is what you said, a direct quote. The majority of Black men are accountable and responsible. So if the majority are, then the majority of Black men should be able to cover the kids that exist.
Right. So the majority of men with children is what I was referring to. So that's the 33% who are all overtasked, raising their children and mentoring. We're having 73% of children out of wedlock, though. That 33%, that number don't match up. That's just the numbers by themselves. So because we got half the boys and men don't have children. Some of them mentor, but I'm saying of the children, of the men that have children, the majority of them are responsible. That's that 33%. But that 33% is trying to cover, but with 73 out of wedlock, they can't cover them all. I'm very aware of what you're talking about. The big brothers, we can't cover them all. It's not enough of us to cover how many children are out here without fathers.
Yeah, it's a lot of them. I used to work at
a numbers game. It's a numbers game.
You might be familiar with Crisis Stabilization Program back in the day.
I don't think I heard of that.
They're in Anderson County. But I used to work in that environment, and we used to take kids right out of whatever the issue was, whether it was sexual abuse or physical abuse or mental abuse, whatever it was. We got them right out, and man, it's like just the amount, even then, and that was like 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying? When I was going through
we just got too many kids.
It's a lot of kids.
Too many kids now.
There's a lot of kids in the system.
Yeah, but guess what? For all those organizations, there are women holding them up. So I think that if Black women have been able to take the torch with all the things that we have all the excuses in the world too.
I agree.
But every organization I volunteer for,
right? But
there's Black women holding it up.
Right, yeah, that's fair. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, we all got to be accountable.
I'm definitely not disagreeing with that. But as you just said, there's not enough to cover these children. We don't have enough women to cover this number of children. Like that's how many children we're having without a family unit.
We got to curve. We got to curve.
73%. That number's so high that curve. Even so I'm not disagreeing with you. You're absolutely right. I mean, like say Big Brothers is, Big Brothers. You got Big Sisters, but they're both short. Both sides are short by a lot. Here, at least in Atlanta, where I know about, and I'm pretty sure that's like that around the country. That there's not enough mentors to cover all the children who are not inside of, they don't have one of their parents involved. Typically, the man.
Let me ask you guys this: do you guys think, and this is it's kind of the same but kind of different? Do you guys think the change in the Roe versus Wade decision, right? Why do you think that change happened this year? What is
we talked about this, Montoya, on one of our shows.
Yeah, and that's what and the way I want to relate that to what we're talking about is because again, just like in this conversation, we're talking about numbers, and what we have to do is we have to curve that that number, right? In order so we can cover the amount. So we don't have an epidemic of You know what I'm saying?
Well,
we're getting to epidemic level.
Here's the reality. That's what's about to come unless we have more dialogues like today. What kind of game can we give the next generation? Because we're not preparing that, what about half the states now going to, some of them already have, but half the states are going to, outlaw some different levels of abortion. Right. So the unfortunate reality is we really have allowed morality to get input into politics. I mean, but when you say how it happened, it's been happening ever since Roe v. Wade got started.
How
it sure did, but yeah.
Why the change? Like
the why is, so as soon as Roe v. Wade got put into place, there was a political movement for this day to eventually come. They didn't expect it to be 50 years later, right. But they've been putting in place for this movement to come the entire time. And so they ended up, getting the numbers on their side. And then they just made a state case that the government should be involved as a constitutional thing. And
I think
there's a legal.
So you don't think it's a solution to anything? Because
or a perceived solution, but not actually one.
Right, a perceived solution, and that's kind of like going back to the contract thing with me. It's like, is that a legitimate solution for whatever the problem may be?
I'm telling you, this is a morality thing. I'm talking about to the people that are pushing this, like the way they're pushing it.
Right.
It ain't related to the numbers like Oshun think. This is literally a morality thing.
If it was a morality thing, then you wouldn't have abortionists and women who work in abortion clinics saying that they reserve a certain amount of hours before they open, before 6 a.m. for the daughters of the men who are pushing this. For those people who are conservative Christians, they go early in the morning, or they have private care where the people can come to their place, or they go to these private places where they can have abortions. Or the thing that I know, I'm a clinician. I've worked in hospitals for almost 25 years. The thing that I know that they do is they say they have in DNCs, which is not dilate and cauterize, which is an abortion, but they use it under the guise of they say, oh, I have some type of medical issue and I'm doing this. But here's my point, is that the people who you think are saying it's a moral issue are having abortions the most.
Yeah, the numbers don't support that.
Okay, the numbers that you think are being reported are not always. The numbers that you are talking about are not always accurately reported. That's the first thing.
So I can respect that, but the numbers are so skewed. Are they hiding numbers when, like, it's one thing if the numbers is like this group is slightly higher than this number. I don't think the numbers are 100%. That's not what I'm saying. But when the numbers are as significantly as different as they are, even I don't know how
it's just like the Catholic Church, how they find all these dead babies. They find hundreds and hundreds of dead babies, skeletal remains behind these old convents. It's because the nuns were getting pregnant and then killing the babies when they're born.
Right.
It's the exact same thing. There is no it's pseudo morality. There is no morality surrounding abortion for conservative white people. They have enough abortions. They have plenty of abortions. They get women pregnant and get abortions. That's why women were like, okay, wait till your husband. You think you can outlaw abortion? All right, let's see what happens when I get pregnant with your husband's baby. They're gonna be paying for those abortions. They have lots of abortions. I don't think the issue is one of morality at all. And how could it be?
Okay, so I'll say this. So I know what you're saying is true, but the context of what of people that do that is they make a relationship, they have the means to make a relationship, and so they're able to go do exactly what you're talking about, control the system and go get their abortions or whatever. That is the people who, once they don't fit the bill, they use their influence to do that. And I'm saying they're not the drivers of the bill, though. The drivers of the bill literally are tied to the morality of this.
It's still pseudo morality because all these people are having abortions. But what I say is, William, is that it boils down to systematic white supremacy fighting its last fight. It is the perceived influx of the same people who voted for to overturn Roe versus Wade are the same people who believe systematically that white people are becoming a minority in this country and that there's this big influx to outdo them. And I truly believe that this is tied to, even though Montoya and I talked about the fact that the likelihood is that the numbers for the abortion won't ever be in white people's favor because they don't have the same fertility rates as other people. But in the people who are pushing this,
they don't have more. That's the issue. They don't have as many abortions. That's where the numbers gonna change. Like we for every what is it? It's 20. It's 10 for whites, 14, 27. So right now, the fertility rates right now only is we have 6 more babies. Hispanics have 6 more babies than whites currently. Let's say, you know what I'm saying, before abortion change.
Per 100, or what are we talking about?
Per I think it's per 100 or per 100. I got it wrote down in my book. I'm trying to do it off my memory, but I know I got the I don't know if it's per 100 or per 1,000, but I know the numbers. So the
reason why I asked that, because I didn't want to get into a long conversation about abortion specifically, okay. But do you guys feel as though that's a radical play for an outcome that is an objective outcome? Do you feel like that is a radical?
Yeah, Oshun definitely agrees with that it is. That's what she was telling you.
Right? Yeah. You feel like that's radical. And so for preservation.
That's where, yeah. I don't support that, but I respect that Oshun supports that.
So it's not emotional. It's not moral. As Oshun would say, it's not led by the moral aspect of it. It's a radical decision for preservation, is what you would say, right, Oshun?
Absolutely.
When do we, as Black Americans, play that game? Because the problem, and I say that based on, because I'm one of those guys, people often say, that's a radical idea, Mr. Agnew. And I think maybe you guys know that about me, right? That sometimes I come up with things such as the proposal of signing the contract before you have, you know what I'm saying?
That's pretty radical.
It's a radical idea, but radical is tied to preservation all the time, always has been. So do we, as Black Americans, get involved in that game of radical ideas, right? Sometimes, or what would be perceived as a radical idea. Not necessarily, it's not necessarily radical to me, right? And a lot of my ideas don't seem very radical to me, although they may be radical to some people, right? But I am about preservation. I am about success and what we're trying to accomplish. And do we ever stand a chance of competing across the aisle or across the board without playing the same type of game in terms of instituting some type of radical control or fix to get an objective that we're trying to accomplish? They do it all the time. That would be my question. And you know
I'm a radical.
And I only asked that question because I wanted to circle back to say that maybe the fix for what we're trying to accomplish, because we talk all day about the problem, right? Which goes back to what Montoya was saying. Like we have dialogue about a problem that is responsible people being irresponsible. It's never going to change if we don't. And maybe they think the same way. And unless we institute some type of radical change, this could become a problem that could literally cause us to be non-existent or extinct. So when do we start looking at it that way?
So I hear what y'all saying, but if they were able, check it out. The last thing that's gonna happen is become distinct when you look at that. When you know, I looked up the numbers real quick just so you know. Right. We have 27 per 1,000 abortions. Hispanics have 18 per 1,000. Whites have 10 per 1,000. But before you look at the abortions, the fertility rates are Hispanics have 6 more. We have 4 more than whites. So when you play with those numbers, they're not making abortion illegal across the entire country. So let's keep it above. But if they were able to, then this is all in our favor.
But I'm not even just talking about abortion. I'm talking about an idea, right?
I understand, but I'm just saying that this actually ends up being completely in our favor based on what y'all are talking about.
Right.
Like right now, if it's
but as I pointed out the last time we had this discussion, what the masses believe and what actually happens in numbers is two totally different things. And I can almost guarantee you these legislators and the people who are making these rules believe some very outlandish and non-scientific and non-factual things. Just because the numbers say that does not mean that they are not thinking if these white girls stop having abortions, we're going to have more white babies. That doesn't mean that they understand what you're saying. Have you listened to these lawmakers talk?
All the time.
And
so then you know that these are not people who are playing with a full deck of cards.
So
I feel like now I'm not playing with a full deck of cards because I'm thinking if we keep having casual sex without accountability, right, we're going to be in the same boat. We're going to be extinct because our family dynamic and our family structure is going to just be torn completely apart and easily manipulated like we see it being done. It's easy to manipulate the Black culture now because it's broken. So these white men, look at hip hop, look at rap, right? You got what's the guy's name? What's his name? NBA young boy. He's like the quintessential hip hop legend right now, and his whole premise is gang. Like that's from the crib to the grave.
We sound like some middle-aged people now.
You understand what I'm saying? So
we old.
My point is, if we don't get a little radical in our thoughts and how to fix our issues, that's all I'm saying. We going to prison. Most of our kids are going to prison or going to jail because them boys are heavily influenced and they are being funded. Huh?
Healthy marriage before children is actually radical in 2022. Believe it or not.
Imagine that.
It is.
Imagine that,
bro.
It is. I just had the conversation Saturday. Like, even the standard of two parents is a trigger for our community psychologically. I see it all the time. And so just throwing it out. But thank y'all for being on. We took way too much time, Oshun's time. So thank you, Queen. Thank you, William, for jumping on.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet you, William.
Yep. Nice to meet you too.
All right. So
till next time.
See y'all on Saturday.
All right. See you Saturday. Peace, y'all.
You enjoyed it as much as I did, Oshun.
Peace.
Every time.
All right. Sounds good. All right. We got somebody else trying to jump on here before I go. Who is this trying to jump on? All right, somebody tried to jump on.
We came from Memphis, Tennessee. I live 4832 Craigmont. I'm a student at Craigmont. I'm a student at Northside. I'm a student at Hills. I'm a student at Clinic School. My phone number is 2722117. Area code 90.
I don't know what that was about, y'all. That sounds crazy. All right, we out this pet thing, y'all. See y'all. Sorry I didn't get to the comments tonight. I haven't been working on this thing a long time, so I forgot to pull them up. So I done missed a whole bunch of comments. Sorry, y'all.